Good evening, everyone. This is Michael. I'm substituting for Tuya today. She'll be representing a lot of us at the Arcane School conference in London. So you'll be hearing maybe a bit more from me during the coming number of days. And we have much preparation to do for the Gemini festival. It's a very important festival given the nature of this work, given the second ray nature of Gemini, given Master DK's position as the messenger of the hierarchy. And we know Gemini is the messenger backed up by the planet Mercury. Well, I'd like to read just a little bit about the forces of reconstruction. We realize that at the three great spiritual festivals, Easter, Wesak, and the Festival of the Christ, or the Festival of Humanity, or it's called by many names, Festival of Goodwill, or sometimes called the Asala Festival in the East. There are three types of forces which are released into the consciousness and into the energy system of humanity. You know, we have the forces of restoration of the plan, released in Aries at Easter. We have the forces of enlightenment, released in Taurus, the great mother of illumination, and finally here we have the forces of reconstruction. We know that one of the great building signs, or rather rays, is the second ray, which is preeminent in Gemini at this time. So here's a little bit. Let's see what it means to us. Interestingly, you know, the Christ was making his decision to return in bodily form and before the eyes of humanity, following the resolution of the Second World War in favor of the forces of light. So here's the Tibetan speaking from the Reappearance of the Christ, page 93 and 94. In June 1945, Christ set in motion the forces of reconstruction which are related to the will aspect of divinity and which remain as yet the least powerful of the three streams of energy released during the full moon festivals in 1945. Very interesting that although, you know, the Festival of Humanity here, of Goodwill, including World Invocation Day, is the third festival, and you'd think that something of the third ray would be released. It's reversed. It is the first ray that's involved, and even though Taurus is a major shambolic sign, the second ray of light is there expressed very strongly, and probably the third ray of creativity at the time of Easter. So we have all of these different ways of combining the rays at the different festivals. Okay, back to DK. These forces of reconstruction are effective mainly in relation to those entities which we call nations. Now let me just add parenthetically, we have the United States and we have the United Kingdom, both with second ray souls, struggling these days on the national level regarding what kind of government they shall have. Okay, going on. The hierarchy is at this time attempting to channel them into the General Assembly of the United Nations. The use made of these impersonal energies is dependent upon the quality and the nature of the recipient nation, on its measure of true enlightenment, and on its point in evolution. Nations are the expression today of the massed self-centeredness of a people and of their instinct to self-preservation. Now, who can deny that? Going on, these energies can, therefore, increase that aspect of their lives. They can, however, and in spite of this, increase the potency of the objective, which the United Nations at present theoretically hold before the eyes of men everywhere. The main object of the hierarchy is so to distribute these constructive, synthesizing energies that the theory of unity may slowly be turned into practice and the word united may come to have a true significance and meaning. We know how, parenthetically, how Gemini is involved in the uniting of the pairs of opposites, Aries Libra opposites with Gemini uniting them, Taurus Scorpio with Gemini uniting them, and so forth, with Pisces uniting Gemini Sagittarius. He will, the Christ, will convey to humanity, the avatar of synthesis will convey to humanity, with the aid of the Christ, something for which we have as yet no name. It is neither love nor will, as we understand them. Only a phrase of several words will bring to us something of the meaning, and this phrase is the principle of directed purpose. The principle of directed purpose. It's kind of a second-ray aspect of first-ray will, and it is the gift of the forces of reconstruction. I just want to say, that as we look ahead here at all that we're going to do, instead of starting with the 3 keynotes tonight, I think we were rushing things a little bit. We'll start tomorrow night with the keynote of love at 8 p.m. GMT, then the keynote of resurrection on Friday, and the keynote of contact on Saturday. And then there will be on Sunday the Gemini pre-full moon, followed very quickly by the Gemini full moon itself at 7 a.m. GMT. So lots for us to do as we think of the advantages and the usefulness of the sign Gemini in the life of humanity. Certainly, many Gemini themes are before us at this time. The news outlets, the news feeds, the way we get our information are ruled very much by Gemini, and there's the whole question of the challenge of would-be dictators and other autocrats against the free flow of information. So, and the so-called fake news, the lying and all of that. So we have to clarify those lines of communication, and we are in the process of attempting to do so, and that will be one of the great tests of democracy, and Gemini has very much to do with the whole democratic process. This morning we, in the Science of Triangles webinar, we discussed the foundational diagram that lies at the root of all the triangular interaction. It looks something like a diamond, or maybe it suggests the figure 8, and it was very interesting to see how the different points of a triangle interplay with each other. There's a great science underneath this whole process. So this will not be, a long meditation, but it will be hopefully offer us the chance of reaffirming our own little triangles network and its relation to the larger network and its relation to the Buddhas of activity and to Shambhala in general. So let us then breathe white light a few times in and sound the Om, the sacred word, inaudibly 3 times. And this is deepening our relationship with each other. We want to form all of our little networks into one greater network, which is part of the worldwide, rapidly forming and very necessary network of triangles. It is a work which, according to the Tibetan, it is a work which must go on. So he gives us a little idea of how he can help us, and he's asking us, as he asked a particular student, every morning prior to the group meditation, to rest quietly back in a chair or in bed and, closing eyes, link up with your soul and with me, your friend, the Tibetan. So we imagine, even at this moment, that we can do that. And he's saying that by doing so we will create a triangle of light between, as he says, your soul, your head center, and myself. Fix and hold this triangle firmly in your consciousness, and through the power of the creative imagination. Now we have a little image of what that triangle might look like. It's a solid triangle, not just an outline. The base is on the mental plane, where he, Master DK, is working, and where dwells and works your soul. And the lower apex, the lower point, is imagined as touching the top of the head. And via this triangle, a stream of light, rather golden, orange, yellow in color and not white, is pouring down. It says more light orange than white in this particular case. And this color pouring down is seen as if flooding our entire body, and thus the entire group here that's working with this little exercise. And during this flooding of color, we're bathing in the light as if we would be bathing in the waters of the sea. And all of our physical equipment and other parts of our personality are permeated by this kind of light. We don't have to worry about what to do with it particularly, because Master DK will oversee the process, and as he says, you can safely leave it to me. So at least for this particular disciple, to whom or for whom he assigned the exercise, and probably for us, it will aid us in handling our life problem and our service until such time as, and this is so important, you enter into that light wherein consciousness awakens free from the bonds of flesh. The blessings of your co-disciples is upon you, and yours on them. Now in this next stage we've reached a state of poise, and we're holding the consciousness steadily in the mind and not so much in the head. Do we know the difference? Do we know the feel of that? And we contact the spiritual triplicity, which is that which hovers over the square and makes and radiates the energy of light into the waiting field of active thought. So what we have now is the mind held steady in the light. We can visualize that, feel that, if we can. We can think in the light of the soul. It's the very first step in the building of the Rainbow Bridge. And now thinking about the forces of reconstruction and how they are releasing the energy of purpose, despite the fact that Gemini is primarily at this time a second ray sign, we will say together the mantram of the will. In the center of the will of God I stand, naught shall deflect my will from His. I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve my fellow men. Now, our own little networks, whether it's one triangle or 50 or whatever, we think of them, we focus on our triangular triangles, and we start with the premise that energy follows thought. And we call upon the group members by name and with love, whether outwardly or inwardly, and we'll keep some silence as we do this. Love and goodwill will be seen as passing between the members of our triangular triangles, and this is the way of converting the squares of the etheric nature of the planet into triangles. So let us visualize and work with our triangles and our own little network. Now, we'll visualize the flow of spiritual light passing between all of these triangles and descending from one of the three Buddhas of activity, particularly. They are the three great beings that in Shambhala hover over the triangles network and can use it in case of planetary or human emergency. And in the light we recognize that when the eye is opened, all is illumined. It's the Taurus keynote. But also in the light we can recognize our other self, and in the waning of that self we can grow and glow. So the etheric network is growing more vivid, more lifelike, more full of dynamic energy in our own little triangular network, in the wider triangular network, and even stretching up to Shambhala, the Buddhas of activity, and we can visualize at the center of each triangle maybe the Christ, maybe even Sanat Kumara. So there's three stages here. Our own little network, as you see, the wider network, which is planetary, and the three Buddhas of activity in Shambhala. So it reaches to a very high stage in the planetary energy system. And as DK says, it's a work. We're not just idly using our imagination, it's a work which must go on. These triangles of light and goodwill are essentially, says the Tibetan, invocative. They constitute the ABC of the coming science of invocation. The word ask in our Ask project is all about a simple way to understand invocation. The strength of these triangles, and this is important, is dependent upon the depth of feeling existent in the triangle, in the one case, and the strength of the will in the other, the strength of the will with which they are created. So get the sense that this is a very living network, very living, and becoming increasingly living and moving towards that magical number. Just, it's approximation 100,000 triangles, which can turn the negatively tending world situation around so that the new age can come in the right manner. So now we're going to go along with the great invocation, the great word of power, the word of invocative science, the great invocation. So we will see the global network of golden triangles covering the entire planet, linking people and communities and states and nations and continents. We try to realize the factual nature of this great subjective network, and increasingly it will substand and underlie world affairs with powerful soul effect. It's a growing, vital reality, and can break through and break up all the limiting outer cleavages and wrong relations, and by the very force of its interior life, it can eventually externalize itself when there are sufficient triangles of depth and great feeling and love illumined, and eventually of will. The earth is as if a sacred planet. It is sacred inwardly, we are told, and this triangle's work, transforming the etheric body from squares to triangles, will help in this process of rendering the earth sacred. Eventually, like the sun, there will be a network of spheres or circles one day. So we sound the Om 3 times, seeing the light and the love, goodwill, and even the will to good pouring through the global triangles network. Friends, want to thank you for being here with us. Now remember that we don't have the keynote webinar tonight. We have it starting tomorrow night, a little bit closer to the full moon. So what we have is Thursday night love, Friday night resurrection, Saturday night contact, then the pre-full moon, and on Sunday night, and then at 7 a.m. GMT we have the actual broadcast. It's not a webinar, the actual broadcast of the Gemini full moon. Very high point when the dialogue between soul and personality can really be meaningful, and the travel of wisdom and intuition and spiritual will to the personality can occur, can be facilitated. So we'll close with those thoughts in mind. Grateful for any contributions that you can make to help to sustain this broadcasting and webinaring work, and start looking out on the YouTube channel, Moria Federation Esoteric Education, for new programs and for programs from the recent conference on the third ray, on the 4 runners of the light, manifesting, illumining and manifesting the divine plan. Next year, the 4th ray conference having to do with the great intuition and artistry and truth. So make your plans now, and let's increase our point of tension as we move towards the actual full moon moment, which will be on Monday morning. I think something like 8:32 in the morning GMT. So many blessings, lots of love from Tuya and myself, and from all who work with the University of the Seven Rays, Seven Ray Institute, and the Moria Federation, Blue Rose Sisterhood, and all of the organizations that we are involved in stimulating for the sake of the helping to prepare the way for the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ.